Let me tell you something most people never understand. You don't need a massive breakthrough to change your life. What you need is momentum. You need a spark. And that spark doesn't come from winning the lottery or having the perfect plan. It comes from a decision, a small action, a tiny victory. See, we're taught to chase the big goals, the big moments, the dramatic transformations, but real, lasting change, it starts with the smallest win. One push-up, one early morning, one more call, one promise kept to yourself. Because when you start stacking those small wins, something incredible happens. Your psychology shifts, your confidence rises, and suddenly you're not hoping for change anymore, you're driving it. That's the power of small wins. That's where the unstoppable you begins. Let me tell you something. Most people forget when they set out to transform their life. They think they have to start big. They think they need a grand vision, a perfect plan, an explosion of motivation that'll carry them to the finish line. But life doesn't work like that. Change doesn't work like that. Momentum doesn't fall into your lap. It doesn't show up one morning because you finally bought a new planner or watched a motivational video. Momentum isn't found, it's built. And the way you build it isn't through massive action that burns out in a week. You build it through small, intentional wins, stacked one on top of the other until the weight of your consistency becomes greater than the weight of your excuses. Think about it. When a train is at rest, even a 1-inch block in front of its wheels can stop it from moving. But once that train is moving at full speed, it'll crash through a 5-foot wall of steel and concrete like it's paper. That's momentum. But to get to that kind of power, the engine has to start with a spark. The wheels have to turn just a little, and then a little more, and then a little more. Your life is the same way. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to be confident, waiting to have the full picture, that's a trap. You don't wait for momentum. You don't wait for clarity. You create both. One decision, one action, one step at a time. Let's bring this down to real life. Maybe you want to get in shape. Maybe you want to rebuild your relationship. Maybe you want to change your financial life. Whatever it is, you don't need to revolutionize your entire life overnight. That's where people quit. They try to go from 0 to 100 in one day, and when it doesn't work, when the results don't show up fast enough, they fall back into old patterns and call it failure. But here's the truth. It wasn't failure. It was unsustainable. It was unrealistic. It was based on hype instead of habits. Small wins change that. You wake up and you drink water before your coffee. Win. You walk for 10 minutes when you'd usually scroll. Win. You say something kind instead of snapping. Win. You send that one email you've been avoiding. Another win. These aren't minor. They're everything. They're proof. They're evidence. They're deposits into your momentum account. And each one tells your brain, I can do this. I follow through. I move forward. That's how momentum gets built. Not in a single explosion of effort, but in a steady climb of deliberate actions that compound over time. And here's the thing, your brain is always tracking. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you build self-trust. Every time you let yourself down, you erode it. That's why small wins matter. They're not just about checking something off a list. They're about building your identity. When you start stacking small wins, you shift from being someone who tries to someone who does. You stop saying, I hope I can change, and you start saying, this is who I am now. That's a psychological shift, and it's powerful. Have you ever noticed how doing just one thing right, one small thing, can change the way your whole day feels? You get out of bed, make it immediately, and suddenly you feel a little more in control. You finally return that call you've been avoiding, and your energy lifts. That's not coincidence. That's momentum kicking in. That's you reclaiming power. And the more you do it, the more it multiplies. It's not linear, it's exponential. One win leads to another, and suddenly you're not forcing yourself to move forward anymore. You're being pulled by the force you created. But let me be clear, small wins aren't passive. They don't happen by accident. You have to be intentional. You have to look for them. You have to decide every day that you're going to move forward, even if it's just by an inch. Because guess what? Inches become feet, feet become miles, and miles change your life. Most people want to take giant leaps. They want to go from lost to found in a weekend. But the ones who truly transform their lives, those are the people who fall in love with the inch by inch game. They understand that if you win today, and then you win tomorrow, and you keep winning each small battle, you eventually win the war. And when setbacks come, and they will, it's those small wins that keep you grounded. They remind you that you're not back at square one. You're not starting over. You've built something. You've stacked days of integrity, days of discipline, days of action. That becomes your foundation. That's what keeps you from spiraling. That's what pulls you back up when life tries to drag you down. So don't underestimate the power of that one tiny decision you're facing today. It might feel small. It might feel insignificant, but it's not. It's your spark. It's your ignition. It's the beginning of momentum that doesn't just move you forward, it changes your life. Because once momentum is on your side, there is nothing. Progress is power. It's the lifeblood of fulfillment, the engine that drives confidence, and the reason we keep moving even when the world says we shouldn't. Most people think they want happiness, but happiness is fleeting. It's a moment. What we really crave is a sense of progress, a sense that we're becoming more, that we're evolving, growing, building, step by step. You don't need to be at the finish line to feel powerful. You just need to feel like you're no longer standing still. You need to feel movement. Progress isn't about having everything you want. It's about knowing you're on the path, and every small win along the way is proof that you're no longer who you used to be. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget that real change happens in inches. The reason people stay stuck isn't because they lack talent, resources, or desire. It's because they look at the gap between where they are and where they want to be, and they get overwhelmed. The mountain looks too tall. The dream looks too far away. So they freeze. They wait. They stall. But when you break that dream down into small, winnable steps, and you start to actually feel progress, something powerful happens. You stop looking at the distance and you start focusing on the next step. And that shift changes everything. Progress isn't measured in leaps. It's measured in the courage to take another step. That's where power is born. When you look back on your life, you won't remember the huge breakthroughs as much as you'll remember the moments when you could have quit, but didn't. The day you got up and kept going when it didn't feel like anything was working. The morning you pushed through the discomfort, showed up when nobody was watching, did the thing you didn't want to do. Those are the moments that build your story. Those are the moments that give you the strength to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm proud of who I'm becoming. You don't need perfection. That's the trap. You think you have to get everything right, never make a mistake, never slip up. But perfection is the enemy of progress. It's an illusion that keeps people paralyzed. The truth is, you're going to fall. You're going to stumble. That's part of the game. But if you can stand back up and still take another step forward, you've already won. That's progress. That's power. Every stumble, every misstep, every moment of doubt, it doesn't take away your progress unless you let it. It only slows you down if you stop moving. As long as you're in motion, you're in control. And here's the beautiful part. Progress feeds your identity. Every time you make progress, even in a small area, your brain says, look at that. I'm growing, I'm changing, I'm doing it. That shift in identity is everything. Because once you start identifying as someone who grows, someone who moves forward no matter what, someone who honors their word to themselves, you become unstoppable. You're no longer fighting for change, you are change. And that's when things really start to accelerate. That's when you stop needing outside validation because the proof is in your actions. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. You just have to move. You've got to understand something. Progress is addictive. Once you get a taste of it, it lights something inside you. It creates momentum. It fuels belief. It gives you something to protect, something to fight for. You go from hoping for results to expecting them. You go from crossing your fingers to showing up with certainty. Why? Because you've seen what happens when you take consistent action. You've seen how small wins stack up into something real, something solid. You've seen how the shift in your body, your energy, your confidence, That's not motivation. That's identity. That's ownership. That's power. And don't think it has to be flashy to count. Progress doesn't need applause. It doesn't need a spotlight. The most powerful shifts happen quietly, behind closed doors when nobody else is watching. It's that moment you choose to follow through instead of putting it off. The moment you rewrite your excuses into reasons. The moment you show yourself that today doesn't have to look like yesterday. That's where progress lives. Not in the crowd, not in the highlight reel, but in the ordinary choices that lead to extraordinary change. So if you're not where you want to be right now, that's okay. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're just supposed to move. You're just supposed to grow. Let go of needing to arrive and fall in love with becoming. When you lock into that mindset, when you start measuring your success by how much progress you make instead of how perfect you look, everything changes. You start to realize that real power isn't about being the loudest, the fastest, or the strongest. It's about being consistent. It's about being relentless. It's about choosing every single day to take one more step forward, no matter how small. Because when you do that, you don't just change your results, you change your life. You stop waiting for power and you start generating it one win at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time. That's the game. That's the edge. That's what turns average into extraordinary. Progress is power. And when you own it, there is nothing that can stop you. Your brain is a masterpiece of adaptation. It doesn't just take in the world and reflect it back. It learns, it adjusts, it rewires itself based on what you repeatedly do, think, and feel. And here's the truth most people don't realize. Repetition is the gateway to transformation. You don't just think your way into a new identity, you condition yourself into it. Every small win, every consistent action, every time you show up and follow through, you're not just making progress on the outside, you're reshaping your inner world. You're teaching your brain what to believe, how to feel, and what it should expect from you. And over time, those little wins start to reprogram your psychology in a way that creates lasting change. We are creatures of habit, emotional, mental, and physical. You don't become confident by accident. You don't become disciplined by luck. You build it. One decision at a time, one small victory at a time. And with each win, something deeper happens beneath the surface. Your nervous system starts to recognize a new pattern. It starts to let go of the old story, the one that says you're inconsistent or lazy or not good enough, and begins to write a new one, that you are capable, that you are growing, that you are becoming more than who you were yesterday. Most people are unaware of how powerful these tiny repetitions are. They think, what's the big deal if I skip one workout? What does it matter if I break my diet today? It's just one moment. But it's never just one moment. It's a message. It's a signal. It's another vote for the identity you're reinforcing. Every action you take is a declaration of who you believe you are. And the more often you take that action, whether it moves you forward or pulls you back, the more you cement that belief into your subconscious. That's how habits form. That's how identities are built. That's how your brain is rewired. Now, here's where it gets even more powerful. The moment you start collecting those small wins and repeating them daily, consistently, intentionally, you begin to override your old conditioning. That voice that used to say, I can't, gets quieter. The fear that used to paralyze you loses its grip, because your brain has proof now, is no longer working off of hope or empty affirmations. It has evidence. And evidence is stronger than emotion. Evidence gives you leverage. It creates certainty. You start to see yourself differently, not because someone told you to, but because your repeated actions forced your brain to accept a new reality. And the beautiful part is, your brain doesn't care whether a win is big or small. What it cares about is repetition. Repeated failure builds a belief in failure. Repeated excuses build an identity of avoidance. But repeated wins, even tiny ones, build belief. They build trust. They build emotional muscle. That's why stacking small victories is so critical. You're not just changing behavior, you're rewiring the architecture of your confidence, one loop at a time. You ever wonder how someone goes from timid to confident, from anxious to bold? It's not magic. It's not some miracle moment. It's the result of consistently putting themselves in situations where they're forced to grow over and over. They take the uncomfortable action. They do the thing they fear, and then they do it again and again until one day it doesn't scare them anymore. That's what repetition does. It turns resistance into routine. It takes the unknown and makes it familiar. It rewires your nervous system to respond to challenge not with panic, but with power. That's the key to lasting change. It's not intensity, it's consistency. Most people wait for the perfect mood, the perfect plan, the perfect energy, but the people who change their lives don't wait, they act, they show up, they repeat the habits that matter even when they don't feel like it, especially when they don't feel like it. And the more they do, the more automatic it becomes. The brain learns what you feed it. Repetition becomes your greatest ally because it teaches your brain, this is who I am now. And over time, you begin to notice the shift. The things that used to feel difficult now feel natural. The voice of doubt that once screamed at you now barely whispers. You've created a new normal. You don't have to fight for confidence. It flows. You don't have to force discipline. It's who you are because you've built a new internal rhythm, and it's one that matches the life you're committed to living. So understand this, change isn't about one big decision. It's about 1,000 small ones. It's about doing what matters over and over again until the repetition rewires the way you see yourself and the way you interact with the world. That's where the power lives. That's how transformation sticks. You don't just change what you do, you change who you are. And it all starts with one small win, repeated until your brain has no choice but to believe you are exactly the kind of person who wins. Emotion follows motion. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a law of human behavior. So many people sit around waiting to feel motivated, confident, passionate, ready. They believe they need to feel the right emotion before they can act. But that's backward. That's the trap. Because emotion doesn't come first. Motion does. You want to change how you feel? Move. Act. Shift your body, shift your state, shift your energy. That's the trigger. That's the spark. You don't need to feel confident to act confidently. You act confidently first and the emotion follows. We're emotional creatures, yes, but we're also physical. The body is the fastest gateway to shifting your mind. When you sit slouched over, breathing shallow, speaking hesitantly, you're training your brain to feel small. You're telling your nervous system, I'm not ready, I'm uncertain, I'm stuck. But if you stand tall, breathe deeply, move with intent, and speak with strength, even when you don't fully believe it yet, your physiology sends a different message. Your brain reads that signal and says, something's changing here. We're stepping into something new. That's how you override doubt. That's how you break the cycle of waiting to feel ready. Small wins, even the tiniest ones, create that motion. You get out of bed when your mind tells you to hit snooze. Motion. You make your bed. Motion. You put on your workout shoes even if you don't feel like exercising. Motion. And suddenly, your emotions begin to catch up. You start to feel a little more capable, a little more focused, a little more alive. It doesn't take much. Just a shift. One step. One breath. One decision to lean into action instead of sitting in hesitation. That's when your emotional state begins to change, not because the world changed, but because you did. People wait for inspiration to strike like lightning, but the truth is, emotion is a slave to momentum. When you stay stuck, when you overthink, when you hesitate, your emotions spiral. Doubt grows, anxiety builds, fear takes root. But when you move, when you push through the friction of inaction, you disrupt that pattern. You take your power back. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to climb a mountain. You just need to do something small that says, I'm in control. I'm not a prisoner of my feelings. I decide what happens next. This is how confidence is built. Not by thinking your way into it, but by moving your way into it. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the byproduct of action. It's what you earn after doing the hard thing, after pushing through resistance, after showing up when it would have been easier to shrink. And every time you do that, every time you choose movement over hesitation, your emotional state levels up. You become bolder, clearer, stronger, not because the fear disappeared, but because you decided it wouldn't control you. Think about it. When was the last time you felt powerful, unstoppable, fully alive? It wasn't while sitting still waiting for clarity. It was when you were in motion. Maybe you finished something you'd been avoiding. Maybe you made a tough call, had a hard conversation, lifted a heavy weight, or stepped outside your comfort zone. That action stirred something inside you. That's the magic. That's the formula, and it's always available to you. You don't have to wait. You can shift your energy in a second if you choose to move. Motion also creates certainty. When you sit still, everything seems bigger than it is. Problems grow in your mind. Self-doubt multiplies. But when you take even a tiny step forward, you gain clarity. You stop spinning and start executing. That's when fear shrinks and momentum builds. Your mind stops asking, can I do this? And starts declaring, I'm doing this. And once you've done that enough times, your emotions begin to follow your leadership. They stop running the show. You're no longer at the mercy of how you feel. You're driving your own state. And here's what most people don't get. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you never feel down, tired, or scared. It means you recognize those feelings and move anyway. It means you don't let emotion dictate action. You let action reshape emotion. You stop reacting to life and you start creating it. That's the difference between people who succeed consistently and those who stay stuck. The winners don't wait to feel perfect. They create motion and let the emotional alignment come second. This is how transformation becomes sustainable. It's not just about hype or willpower. It's about understanding how your mind and body work together. You train yourself to act. And with each repetition, you build emotional resilience. You create an inner power source that doesn't depend on motivation because it's fueled by movement. You know how to generate the emotion you need because you've trained your nervous system to respond to motion with strength. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't wait to feel like it. Don't wait for clarity or confidence or calm. Move. Take one action. Breathe deeper, stand taller, speak louder. Do the thing, no matter how small, that puts you back in motion. Because when you do that, your emotions will follow. They'll catch up to your leadership. And in that space, you'll find the power that was never gone. It was just waiting for you to move. Momentum is the silent force behind every major transformation. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up with fireworks. But once it's in motion, it becomes nearly unstoppable. And here's what most people don't realize. Momentum doesn't come from big wins. It doesn't come from perfect execution. It comes from consistency, small, repeated actions that build upon each other until they create a force of their own. That's how you go from stuck to unstoppable. It's not about doing everything all at once. It's about doing something every single day. Most people fail not because they don't have a goal, but because they don't honor the process. They chase intensity instead of consistency. They sprint for a few days, crash, and wonder why they feel defeated. But the people who succeed long term, who actually build something sustainable, they understand that small wins create the spark and consistency turns that spark into a fire. That fire is called momentum, and it's the compound interest of effort. Every choice you make adds to it or takes away from it. You're either feeding the fire or letting it burn out. What's beautiful about momentum is it doesn't care how small the step is. It just wants movement. It just wants you to keep going. Because once you're in motion, staying in motion becomes easier. The hardest part is always the start, the first workout, the first uncomfortable decision, the first piece of content, the first courageous conversation. But once you've broken through that initial resistance, momentum starts to kick in. And then what was once difficult begins to feel normal. What was once intimidating becomes automatic. And that's the key to consistency, making progress feel natural. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about loyalty to your future. It's about making decisions that align with who you're becoming, not who you've been. That means showing up even when it's inconvenient. That means keeping your promises to yourself even when no one's watching. Because every time you follow through, you're not just checking off a box, you're stacking a win. And each of those wins is like a brick. One brick might not look like much, but stack enough of them day after day, and you've built a fortress of momentum, something solid, something real. And the moment that momentum starts to build, everything changes. Your energy changes, your mindset shifts, your belief expands. You start seeing results, not just externally, but internally. You start trusting yourself more. You stop negotiating with excuses. You begin to identify as someone who follows through, someone who creates results, someone who gets it done. That shift in identity is what consistency gives you. And that identity is what fuels even more momentum. It becomes a cycle. But now it's working in your favor. Here's what makes momentum so powerful. It multiplies your effort. When you're stuck in inertia, everything feels heavy. Every task feels like a burden. Every step feels like a battle. But once you've built momentum, those same steps feel lighter. Your output increases without increasing your effort. Why? Because your body, your mind, your spirit, they're all aligned now. They're all moving in the same direction. You're no longer fighting your own resistance. You're flowing with your own power. But here's the deal. You have to protect your momentum. It's fragile in the beginning. It's easy to break. That's why discipline matters. Not rigid, cold discipline, but loving, purposeful discipline. The kind that says, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because I deserve to. The kind that honors the life you're building and the person you're becoming. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you reinforce that momentum. You strengthen it. And before long, it starts to carry you. You also have to understand that momentum doesn't mean every day looks the same. You'll have off days. You'll have moments when the energy isn't there, when motivation is nowhere to be found. But the secret is to keep the chain going. Even if you can't give 100%, give what you can. If you can't run, walk. If you can't create, plan. If you can't be bold, be consistent. Because it's not about the size of the step. It's about the rhythm. And rhythm is what keeps momentum alive. Over time, the small wins you once had to push for become your new baseline. What was once a stretch becomes standard. That's how you evolve. Not in giant leaps, but in steady climbs. Not in dramatic bursts, but in quiet commitment. That's the power of momentum. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention, but it changes everything. It makes the impossible feel inevitable. It turns dreams into plans. It gives your future a foundation built on action, not just hope. So wherever you are right now, start where you are. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait to feel ready. Take the step that's in front of you. Build the win you can build today and do it again tomorrow. Stack your wins. Honor your rhythm. Speed your momentum. Because when consistency meets small wins, momentum is born. And when momentum is on your side, nothing can stop you. Progress isn't just a measurement of achievement, it's fuel for the soul. It's what makes you feel alive. It's what reminds you that you're growing, evolving, becoming. And the beautiful part, progress doesn't have to be massive to matter. In fact, it's often the smallest, most subtle wins that deliver the biggest internal shifts. That one moment where you didn't hit snooze, that one workout you pushed through, that one decision to speak up instead of staying silent. These small victories might seem insignificant in the moment, but they create a sense of momentum, pride, and confidence that starts to build something extraordinary from the inside out. People often underestimate the emotional power of progress because they're trained to look only at outcomes. They celebrate the big goals, the big promotions, the big milestones. But what they miss is the process, the everyday steps that made those achievements possible. The truth is, if you only allow yourself to feel good when you hit a massive goal, you're starving your spirit in between. You're postponing joy. And when joy is always tied to the distant future, it's hard to stay motivated in the present. That's why celebrating small wins is not just a nice idea, it's essential. It's the act of telling your mind and body, I'm on the right track. It's a feedback loop that reinforces your effort, that builds emotional resilience, that makes the journey itself feel rewarding, not just the destination. And when your mind starts associating effort with positive emotion, you're more likely to keep going. It becomes less about grinding and more about growing, less about pressure and more about power. You have to understand that every small win is evidence that you're capable, that you're consistent, that you can be trusted to follow through. And that evidence begins to reshape how you see yourself. It's not just about doing the thing, it's about who you're becoming by doing it. When you celebrate a small win, even quietly, even privately, you're acknowledging that progress is happening now, not later. And that creates a sense of fulfillment that no external reward can replace. Think about it. How many times have you made progress but failed to feel it because you were so focused on what was still left to do? You moved forward, but emotionally you stayed stuck. That's the danger of always looking ahead without appreciating what's already behind you. The climb matters, but so does the step you're standing on. Every win you ignore is a missed opportunity to build your belief, to reinforce your habits, to light up your emotional system with the fuel it needs to keep going. This is especially true when you're in the middle of the grind, when the finish line is nowhere in sight, when the results are slow, when no one else sees what you're doing. In those moments, the only thing that will keep you going is your ability to find meaning in the small wins. That's what turns struggle into strength. That's what makes effort feel worthwhile. It's not about pretending everything's easy. It's about finding value in everything you've overcome, no matter how small. Even neuroscience backs this up. When you achieve something, even something small, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical that enhances motivation, focus, and drive. But here's the catch. Your brain doesn't distinguish between big and small achievement. It just knows we did something, we moved forward, we made progress. So if you're waiting for the big breakthrough to finally feel successful, you're missing dozens of chances every week to train your brain to feel empowered, motivated, and alive. That's why you must learn to recognize your progress daily, not just externally like hitting a number or crossing off a task, but internally. Did you handle a situation with more patience today than yesterday? Did you resist an old habit? Did you take action when your old self would have made an excuse? That's progress. That's emotional victory. And that deserves recognition. Because when you wire yourself to feel successful every step of the way, you create a system where winning becomes normal, not occasional, normal. It's also about the identity shift. When you celebrate small wins, you reinforce the belief that you're a person who shows up, who follows through, who gets things done. And over time, those repeated acknowledgments of progress reshape your identity. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who's trying and start seeing yourself as someone who is. That identity becomes a source of emotional stability. It becomes a rock. Because no matter what the world throws at you, you have proof you're making progress. You're becoming more. And don't wait for someone else to validate your wins. Take ownership of your growth. Be your own cheerleader. Acknowledge your efforts. Track your steps forward. Feel the pride that comes from being in the game, from doing the work, from showing up every single day when it would have been easier to sit it out. Because that's what builds character, that's what forges inner strength, and that's what makes long-term transformation inevitable. So celebrate your wins. Savor the moments of progress. Because every time you do, you're not just rewarding the past, you're empowering the future. You're fueling the fire inside you with the one thing it needs most, proof that you're growing, that you're rising, that you're becoming. And when you feel that deeply, there's nothing that can stop you. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger, one small win at a time.